Hey y'all, this is Afro Sensei and welcome to a Q&A. Alright, so we got some questions from Instagram. Thanks to everybody that submitted their questions, so let's get into them. First question is, I'd say it's affected every part of my art. Just like other parts of me, like, being a black man, identifying as a man, being from the South, being a millennial, it's all been impacted. So queerness is another facet of my identity, so it's definitely impacted my art. Certainly in terms of imagery, in terms of the image, as you can see. The way I always have made a point, or have made, at least for a long time now, I've made a point of combining the masculine and the feminine, because I feel like both of those parts exist inside most people. It's rare, not the case that a man would be traditionally masculine all the way and a woman would be traditionally feminine all the way. It's usually a mix of both. And so that's definitely impacted my approach to imagery. It's definitely impacted my approach in songwriting, especially with the songs that have been out recently, like Love Take Over, and the songs that will be on the new album that'll be coming out in the summer, BGC, even down to the title, which is Black Gay Chat, for those who know. It's impacted the songwriting, the subject matter, it's impacted the imagery, so it's really impacted, I would say, every part of my music, even the type of music that I do, really being house music, which got its start, in the black gay community in Chicago and in Detroit with techno. So it's really impacted every part of my artistry. So yeah. Maybe not necessarily in a supernatural sense, but I do believe art and creativity can be very healing. And hopefully, somebody listens to one of my songs or they come across one of my videos, maybe they'll help them, it'll heal them in a sense of it's something they can relate to, or it'll just, pick their mood up for the day. Watching one of my reels that they're entertained, which that has a value too. So maybe not, I don't necessarily know if they're being healed in a supernatural sense, but hopefully they're being helped in some way by seeing, listening to my music. So in that sense, I would say maybe it is, healing. I think that's up to each individual artist. I mean, just in terms of LGBT artists, because with straight artists, it's kind of a given. I think for myself, it is important to identify myself and to be open about my identity. Just because when I was growing up, I didn't have that person to look to in terms of a mainstream artist. So for me, it's definitely important to do that. For someone else, it may not be as important for them to do that. But I think it definitely does help, because the more voices that you have that are open and out about who they are, then less of a stigma it carries, or the less of a novelty it is for people. So I think it definitely helps. But I think it's up to each individual to decide if that's something they want to do. So. I think that it's gotten a lot better than what it was, say, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Because you think about the 90s and that era, I couldn't imagine, this existing on the mainstream level. I mean, you had RuPaul, but in terms of like R&B music, or especially or hip hop or anything like that, I definitely couldn't see an openly gay artist succeeding, male or female, really. Because you think about the era, even someone like Billy Porter, who's super out now. At that time, he played the game of like being in the video with a woman, one of his videos, So I think in that time it wouldn't been possible. Not in the 80s, it wouldn't have been possible. But think about Whitney or Luther or artists like that. It wouldn't have been possible for them to necessarily be open about how they identified. I think it's gotten much better now, but there's still a way to go in terms of it not being, like I said before, a novelty for people, for someone being out, or for it to be a problem for people. But I think it's less of a stigma than it was before. So I think we're heading in the right direction. Especially within the last year, 2 years, as I've started to do more and get more involved in trying to do different types of content, time to just kind of free time to binge watch shows, or spending time maybe like, instead of thinking about going out to stuff before lockdown happened, go out to things instead of just staying home and working on music, or staying home and songwriting, or doing vocals, things like that, and all that takes up more time. So more time takes up, less time there is for other things, to do, that just to have free time. So I would say that's the main probably the main sacrifice is time, free time. So yeah, it's been the biggest sacrifice so far. So. Yes, it has. Before that, before lockdown, I was looking forward to trying to perform more because I had just started to perform out around my area in my city before the year 2019, before lockdown really took shape, took hold. And so I had to think of something else, and the main thing that ended up happening was I started doing a lot more posts in terms of a lot more DIY photo shoots at home, a lot more. Started doing the IG reels and also TikTok. Started doing different types of videos where it was like lyrical T series. It's also on YouTube. Stuff like that's so the lyrical T, things like that. Just doing more content at home and figuring out different types of content I could do to sort of keep myself out there. That was the main thing, is trying to figure out different ways and being really resourceful more than I thought I could be to keep the content going and keep myself out there and in front of people. So it definitely has changed the approach in terms of how to do content, what type of content to do. So yeah, definitely. On a micro level, I would say community, in terms of community of friends or other creatives. I'd say people who care about you, and vice versa. People who really have your best interests at heart. People who are encouraging, especially being creative can be hard sometimes. Staying inspired or dealing with rejection, things like that. So people who really encourage you and don't let you give up, but also hold you accountable and push you, challenge you to try to be better and do better, even if it's by watching them go all in on their creativity. So that on a macro level, that would be a good community, a perfect community. On a bigger level, society level, just less emphasis on always thinking about profit and money and selling and things like that, to have more of a focus and concern for people's general well-being. That would and really thinking about that, not just in terms of like charity, but also actual day-to-day policy. Get deep into politics a bit, but a society that has a concern for people's basic well-being and not having that being tied to whether or not you have a job, which is a whole other discussion. But that would be the perfect ideal community on a society level. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Well, my family already knows about me being a musician because I've been a musician since I was a kid. So, but in terms of this type of music that I'm doing now, I think by and large, especially the immediate family, they're very supportive. But I'm not necessarily always understand what I'm doing in terms of things like this, things like IG reels or TikToks. They're not on TikTok. They're not on IG, and if they are, they're not. They just post what most people post on IG. Photos of the kids, things like that. So I'm not sure they understand my day-to-day, week-to-week activity that I'm doing. But in general, they're supportive of it. They don't necessarily get it, but they're behind me. So yeah. So the main goal, I would say, is the pragmatic goal is for music to be the full-time gig, it to be the full-time 9 to 5, to get to a point where between making my own music and putting it out, performing, producing for other people, songwriting for other people, maybe some licensing, all these different areas and incomes can be enough to where that would be the 9 to 5 job, to be a full-time creative. That's the ultimate goal in music for me, so I can to have that be the main job and be the main focus professionally. So yeah. So thanks to everybody that submitted questions. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe, because I got more stuff coming up, whether that's new lyrical T videos, whether that is more music videos coming up, acoustic performances, things like that. So subscribe so you don't miss any of it. And thanks for tuning in. So bye.